Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully you've all found a seat in our especially wonderfully wide room. Welcome to our MSP Forum. My name is Mark Jeffries, and it is my role to be your MC, your facilitator for the day. So before we even get going, as part of the opening remarks, I thought I would share with you a little bit of detail as to who on earth I am and why I'm on a very wide stage in front of you all this morning. Let's see, just a bit of background. I used to be a stockbroker. That was my very first job. I was in finance. And for a while it was good. And then I woke up one day and I realized I was in absolutely the wrong job. I had to get out, not just of that job, but the whole industry. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Probably not now, because now you're in, frankly, the best jobs in the world. But I knew I was in the wrong position, so I made a very natural transition out of stockbroking at Merrill Lynch in London and into hosting television programs right here in the UK. I hosted about 4 different programs on 3 different channels, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, say what you like, mate. I've never seen you before in my life. I know. I'm well aware. I specialized, if I can be honest with you, in television programs that nobody ever watched. I did CNBC. That was so dull. And then we had, do you remember there was a channel called the Money Channel? Does anybody even remember it? It was backed by Adam Faith and a variety of venture capitalists. Raised a lot of money on the markets. Here was a TV channel dedicated to excellence in running money, in understanding money, and investing in money. And do you know what happened in the end to that channel? It ran out of money, which I thought was quite ironic. But here was the thing. I was on this studio set every single day, interviewing people for 3 hours live. And I would interview people like yourselves, professionals, people who knew a lot about their industry. I'd interview a lot of C-suite executives as well. And I was always amazed at how some of them had this wonderful charisma, this energy. You wanted to listen to what they said. Whereas others were so dull that you'd forget they even existed while they were still sat next to you. That, I used to think, was remarkable. So I did an enormous amount of research into communication, and I left television behind. Nobody noticed. And I opened up what I do now. I have a communication consultancy. I work with organizations on their message, on how it gets delivered. And I ended up carving out this little niche in moderating and hosting conferences all over the world, and also delivering keynotes on the art of business influence, and specifically selling without selling, the power of relationships and networking. So here's the deal. Over today, my role is not just to be the MC and the moderator, but also to share with you a few ideas on how to make the most of what will be a spectacular networking opportunity right here at MSP Forum. IBM likes to get value for money, so I'm doing 2 jobs for the price of 1. So here are just a couple of ideas just to get going. First of all, I want to talk to you about one thing that none of us do very well: listening. I wonder how good you count yourself as a listener. Most people believe they're actually very good at listening, but are we? I will now prove in an instant that none of us listen very well. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm looking for a show of hands only. Don't worry. I won't come and talk to any of you. You're absolutely safe. I will not leave this stage. How many people in the room, show of hands only, suffer like I do with name amnesia? Let me define it for you. You've just met somebody new. You're shaking their hand. It's only been 2 seconds. You've already forgotten their name. Does anybody suffer that? Look at that. That's all of us. Hands down. Do you know why that happens? I'll tell you. Because we're not listening. We are so focused. We're so excited to tell them our name. We're not even listening to theirs. Your name's what? Irrelevant. My name's Mark. What do you think of that? That's what's actually happening. We don't listen. I talk about in my keynote speeches the L war of communication. If you fight the L war, you always win. And it's such common sense. LWAR. Listen, watch, anticipate, and then react. And by react, I mean speak. Pick up the phone, send an email. Listen is always number 1 on that list. And we always need to listen. Not just, by the way, person-to-person listening, but also listening online. Let's talk about Twitter. How many people in the room, show of hands only, don't worry, I won't come and talk to any of you. How many people in the room have a Twitter account and tweet at least once a week? I'm not expecting many hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Maybe 15? That's really low. I'm stunned at how low that is, because Twitter is just such a key communication vehicle at the moment. Let's not even talk about what you say on Twitter now. Let's talk about listening again. Do you listen on Twitter? Every single week, you should, as a matter of business, be going online and searching for what people say about you on Twitter, about your organization, any references to your company, more importantly, references to the industry as a whole. The more you listen, the stronger you become. I'll give you a great example of a company that listens well online. It's in the United States. It's an airline. They're called Southwest Airlines. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're a bit like EasyJet. That's all I'll say. So anyway, on one particular day, Southwest Airlines was having a very difficult morning. A lot of their flights were delayed, horribly delayed. There was one guy sat on one of the planes, and he was tweeting. He was tweeting his outrage. Delayed so badly, at Southwest sucks, S-U-X, because, you've got to keep it all very short on Twitter. He was furious. Unbeknownst to this gentleman, there was somebody at Twitter whose sole job it was to monitor what was being said online about Southwest Airlines. So she sees these angry tweets and she informs the top team. The top team look at the angry tweets and they decide something has to be done. They find out what plane he's on. They find out where it's going. The plane eventually took off. They send Southwest Airlines operatives to the arrivals gate. Seriously. They're standing there with a board with his name on it. This guy gets off the plane, he goes, "That's odd." And they go, "Come over here." And they beat him up. No, okay, they did not. Although that would be a very funny ending to the story. "Give me your BlackBerry, I'll teach you." What actually happened was they said, "Sir, we saw your angry tweets. We're very unhappy with what happened. We apologize for the distress that we caused you. We certainly let you down. And so with our best wishes, please accept 2 free tickets to anywhere on the Southwest Airlines network." That's what they did. This guy then leaves the airport with his wheelie bag and he's tweeting again. "I love Southwest Airlines." Amazing. Just by listening, they were able to turn it into a very positive experience. So the L of the L war. The more you listen, the stronger you become. One other thing, I said LWAR, watch. People are constantly watching you, by the way. They watch you for certain signals, and you should in turn be watching them. Here's one thing you're going to do a lot of today. Let me just reach for my business card. All day today, people are going to be giving you these, and you are going to be handing them out. But what do you do when someone gives you their business card? What do you do? Most people do exactly the same thing. They go, "Thank you very much," put it away, nice and safe. "Thank you very much," put it in my bag. This is a big mistake. This is a huge lost opportunity. And our friends from Asia know this. In Japan, they call it the Meishi ceremony. You know that, right? When they receive a business card, they respect it. They look at it. And this is really important. You should look at someone's card when they hand it to you. Why? Because when someone hands you their business card, what they're actually giving you is their entire career history to date. They're giving you their CV, and they are very proud of it. They're saying to you, "I left school, I got my first job, my second job, my third job. I then moved to this organization, I became VP of whatever it was. I left that company and I started my own, and now I'm CEO of this. What do you think?" And you go, "Yeah, whatever." And it's very rude. So from now on, look at that card. Better still, say something about it. "Oh, I see. You've got the number 7 in your phone number." One of my favorite numbers. Okay, don't say that. That would be quite ridiculous. But do take a moment. Why? Because if you show how much you respect their business card, can you imagine how much you might respect their business? There are moments when those little tiny differences can have a huge impact on your continued business success. So, as we go through the day, I will share with you a few more of these ideas. They're common sense, but sometimes it's just nice to be reminded. So, by the way, I don't know how many of you were. You already told me how many of you were on Twitter, but if you are there, there's my particular Twitter handle. You can communicate your ideas about this event to that Twitter handle or to our hashtag as well, which today is MSP Forum 12. That's MSP Forum 12 if you want to tweet your ideas, your thoughts, or even your questions. Now, let me just show you this. This beautiful thing here is an IBM umbrella. It's a small blue as opposed to a big blue. You all get one of these because we are in London and it does rain pretty much every day throughout the summer. If you fill out your evaluations at the end of the day, you get to take away one of those fabulous umbrellas. That's something not to be missed. You'll also notice if you have a device with you that we are offering free Wi-Fi. Nice. You'll see the IBM and MSP name on the Wi-Fi. It's free, so log in. And you can use it, by the way, to submit questions to our end-of-day Q&A panel. We have a panel with many of the speakers. I'll be running it at the end of the day. If you think of something you want asked and you don't particularly like raising your hands when we do the live Q&A, email it. And the email address is ibmmsp12@gmail.com. ibmmsp12@gmail.com. Here's our agenda. We filled the day with very interesting presentations, lots of valuable content to inspire your ideas and to help you in your quest to grow your business. Why do I know you want to grow your business? Well, that's easy. IBM conducted the 2012 MSP survey, which I know many of you contributed to. And one of the overriding themes of your responses was you were saying to IBM, just show us how we can use the new technology, how we can use the new world of the cloud to grow our business, to grow our success. And so that is how we created this event. And the agenda is there for all to see, and it's very busy, and we move nice and quick through the day. Let's see. By the way, if you want a copy of the MSP survey, it is available on the MSP stand, which is just out there. All right, so I do believe we should start. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a valuable look at the transformation of the MSP market. And please welcome our first speaker to the stage, Principal Analyst from Canalys, Alastair Edwards.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. It's always quite difficult as an analyst speaker to follow a charismatic and funny professional public speaker like Mark. So his job is supposed to set me up to look good. I think there was far too much charisma in those opening remarks. So I'm principal analyst at Canalys. My job is to follow the channel, the route to market for technology, really. I've been tracking the channel and the IT industry for about 14 years. I worked out with a slight shock recently. And my job today is to talk to you about the transformation of the MSP market. Well, the interesting thing is there isn't really a defined MSP market. What we're talking about is a collection of pretty diverse IT services, delivery models, consumption models, which collectively make up this MSP world. And what's fascinating about this event is that if you look around you, you're surrounded by a whole diverse range of companies, from resellers to systems integrators to ISVs to hosting companies, web hosters, even distributors. Many of you have probably never been in the same room together at an event like this. But you're all brought here because you collectively believe that the industry is in a position of transformation towards services-led models. So I'm going to talk to you about how we see that transformation taking place, how that's impacting on your own business models, your customer relationships, and the relationships you have with the vendors you work with. All our slides are available for download, so if you go to our website, canalys.com/download/IBM, and then put in the username MSP and London, not very creative, I'm afraid, but easy to remember. You can get all these slides and also get a bit more information about Canalys. We're an analyst firm. We track the technology industry across a variety of different areas. But what I want to start off with really is to talk about what we see as driving the overall IT market and how that ties into the context of a shift in the way that technology and IT is being delivered and consumed by customers. There are three real megatrends that we see driving the market. We define those as enterprise mobility, and that's really the proliferation of mobile devices, of pads, as we call them, tablets, smartphones, but also a whole range of related technology areas, products, solutions, which collectively translate into pretty significant revenue opportunities for the IT industry. So I'm talking about virtualization of the desktop, wireless networks to support all these wireless mobile devices that are being brought into corporate environments, corporate networks. New ways of delivering applications on those devices. Device and application management, of course, being a key area. And security, which is a critical concern for IT departments who are facing the proliferation of these devices in their organizations. On the other side, we see consumerization of IT as being linked to but separate from enterprise mobility, because consumerization of IT is about a change in the way that users engage with IT. Not the way IT departments necessarily engage with IT, but the way that users engage with IT within their companies. So bring your own device is an obvious theme that we've seen, and it's a very real theme. Again, tying into the mobility piece, but bring your own device is not just about mobility. It's about bringing the devices, whether that's a desktop or a laptop or whatever device, into the organization. But it's also about things like social media, video, new ways of collaborating on those devices. It's about multiple operating system and hardware platforms, Android, Apple, as well as Windows. We're seeing a whole range of new vendors coming into the corporate environment as well. And of course, security is another very consistent theme here as well. And then in the center, what we call data center transformation. And that's really taking that static, rigid, inflexible data center environment that most companies have today and transforming that either to an internal private cloud or a external public cloud, but more broadly, IT as a service. And linked to that, of course, with the explosion of data, we see big demand for analytics, for big data solutions. But ultimately, actually, what the data center transformation is driving primarily is investment in servers, storage, infrastructure, high-capacity networks to support the explosion in data traffic, and the kind of applications that enterprise and mobility and consumerization are fueling. But of course, we also see some significant challenges that the industry faces in terms of fulfilling all this demand. Of course, the economy is probably top of mind for all of you, and we all know that when the latest headline comes out about the Spanish bailout or the Greek crisis, how that impacts on the confidence of your customers and extends the sales cycles that you're working to, that really impacts your ability to sell solutions into a nervous and uncertain customer base. You're also having to deal with changing consumption models as customers move from on-premise to more IT as a service models. Interestingly, the state of the economy is actually, in many cases, hindering the shift to OPEX-based models. Consistently, we hear, in the CapEx versus OPEX argument, customers will say, well, hold on a minute, a CapEx investment for me is predictable. I know that I can spend that money when I have that budget available. If I move to an OPEX-based model, I'm going to have to be sure that I can pay that monthly annuity fee even when my business is struggling. Both of those themes, of course, impact on your working capital, your cash flow. And we see that a real shortage of skills in the industry today across the whole spectrum of pre-sales, sales, software development, marketing, technical expertise. So these are challenges that you as an MSP environment or community collectively and vendors have to address. And interestingly, we're also seeing increased competition as new vendors come into this market, as new service providers start to move towards IT as a service, attracted often by cloud. I also want to make the point that from an endpoint perspective, from a client PC perspective, the world is changing, and it may be changing even faster than you think. At Canalys, we track the smartphone and the PC markets. And what we're forecasting this year is that the PC market will grow to about 460 million units worldwide. But the impact of the iPad is already being felt in the PC market, and we consider an iPad to be a PC. Now, of course, we're talking about pads here, tablets, but the iPad is fueling a big proportion of that 11% growth in that worldwide PC market. But that's only half the story. Last quarter, or in Q4 2012, we saw something of a momentous event when the number of smartphones, that is, smart mobile devices with their own operating system capable of supporting complex applications, the number of smartphones overtook the number of PCs shipped for the first time in the industry. In 2012, we expect the number of mobile smart intelligent devices, that's pads, smartphones, PCs, laptops, in total to hit 1.1 billion, and that's growth of 23%. And although this includes consumer, a lot of those devices are now finding their way onto corporate networks. They're being used to access applications. And this creates a massive challenge for organizations that are having to deal with that from an endpoint management point of view, from a security point of view, from the point of view of allowing their users to get access to the applications they need to do their jobs. So while this is a huge challenge, it's also a huge opportunity. And what we see within the customer base is a transition. Customers have started that transition within their IT environments. For large, I mean, the scale and the pace of that and the nature of that transition differs by customer size, by customer type, by vertical. Large organizations and public sector organizations that have typically spent a lot of money on large-scale outsourcing contracts are, in many cases, breaking those outsourcing contracts down, bringing a lot of that IT, in some cases, back on-premise to build private clouds which deliver more flexibility and more scalability within the boundaries of the corporate network. Or they're breaking down those big outsourcing contracts that historically have been served by large systems integrators into smaller managed service pieces of business. And that gives other players, many of you in the room, the chance to capture some of that growth. For most of the other companies in the corporate world, from small businesses up to sort of mid-market enterprise, what we're seeing is a transition from on-premise to managed, to hosted, and in some cases, to cloud. That is a gradual transition. It's not an overnight shift. It's not a revolution by any means. And of course, the challenge for companies like yourselves to capture the growth that this represents is to be positioned in the right place on the path of that transition. So if you're coming to this as a cloud provider who is kind of way further up the path in terms of where companies are today, you may struggle to capture some of those companies that are on the first stages of moving away from kind of on-premise managed through to off-premise managed and hosted. Similarly, or in the reverse, if you're coming at this from a kind of on-premise reseller perspective, and your customers are accelerating away from that, and they want to move beyond where they are today, then maybe you're not in the right place to help them on that journey. So there are real challenges that the industry, the providers to companies face as they go through this journey. We see the managed services market growing pretty fast. This is our global forecast. It's probably going to grow about 50% over the next 6 years. This is going to be in the context of a growth market, and this includes PCs. So there is some big growth numbers in there as well. But what we see is that managed services is now very much a component of the channel, for want of a better word, in the broader sense, those companies that are delivering IT to customers. Managed services is now a pretty important part of that business model. This is a survey we ran of our channel community. We have about 4,500 companies, primarily in EMEA, that are part of a community we run called Candefero. And that represents a broad spectrum of resellers, systems integrators, service providers, and we can run surveys of that community. And we looked at what percentage of their business was coming from managed service today. And this really kind of gives you a good insight into how that community is addressing managed service. So for the majority, about 50%, managed service actually still accounts for less than 10% of their total revenue. These are the guys that are coming from very traditional resell background. You've got about 20% that are really starting to move their businesses more towards an as-a-service model. So they perhaps got to around 10 to 20% of their business coming from managed services. And then you have another fifth for whom the IT as-a-service model is really a strategic part of their business. So that's the 20% that see more than 20% of their business coming from managed services today. And interestingly, you have another just over 10% that don't derive any revenue from managed services. These are the guys who are probably going to find themselves falling behind quite significantly as their customers change and look for alternative delivery and consumption models. What's happening as a consequence of this is that product and service channels are converging. So at Canalys, we define the routes to market for products and services. We identify different partner types, different channel types, resellers, systems integrators, and so on. But what we see is that more and more of these different categories are moving towards services-led models. So whether that's a corporate reseller who's starting to shift more of their business to as a service, whether that's service providers that are starting to deliver hosted IT, systems integrators, vendors. Vendors are a pretty important part of this because vendors now recognize that this is an important way for them to reach their customers. And we see a lot of the big infrastructure vendors building their own cloud and managed service capabilities. And that's going to be both a threat and opportunity for the partnerships that they have today with the channel. But what we see is those channels converging. And I urge you, wherever you sit in the managed service world today, you need to understand what this competitive landscape looks like. You need to understand, if you're a hosting company, what the corporate resellers are doing in terms of building out MSP business models. You need to understand what the vendors are doing. Now, cloud is a part of this. It's part of the solution. It's also part of the problem, I would argue. The problem with cloud is that we've done a very good job as an industry of taking really what is a natural evolution of the technology and IT delivery mechanisms and creating something new from a marketing perspective, which is great, and that's generated a lot of business for us. But what it's also done is it's increased the amount of confusion and uncertainty amongst our customers. All those issues around data control and access, security, SLAs, all those kind of things. And it's been that model has kind of been defined by a few big companies who have been very good at moving in that direction quickly and becoming very high-profile cloud providers. But actually, I would argue that we need to take a different approach to this. We need to recognize that cloud is one component of this transition path that customers are on. And we need to do a better job of explaining to customers and clarifying to customers how this benefits us and how this fits within their overall the transition path that they're on within their IT environment. So actually, we think that if you take the true meaning of cloud, so metered, billable, multi-tenant IT resources delivered by a third-party service provider, The market's probably around about 37 billion globally. A lot of the cloud hype has actually driven investment in private cloud. And private cloud here, we mean the infrastructure piece, software tools. But essentially, this is really a product business. So that's still the bigger share of the business. And overall, we think that the market, from a channel point of view, will continue, from an opportunity point of view, will continue to be defined by the private cloud piece. So we think that cloud, the way that cloud should be addressed by the industry is to identify what the key value business cases are for your customers, and do a better job of taking those value propositions to your customers. So we think there are a few important areas that should be considered in that. Now, of course, moving from a CapEx to an OpEx-based model is one obvious one where customers lack CapEx budget and they can move more business to an OpEx model. That's a no-brainer in many senses. But there are lots of new and innovative things that cloud bring that customers, particularly mid-market and SMB customers, haven't maybe had the capability to access before. They can really leverage the benefits of large-scale cloud providers, enabling them to access new applications, new functionality on a pay-per-use or utility basis. We think people that, and I've already mentioned this, the outsourcing market is ripe for a move to cloud because they've already outsourced a lot of their IT. And it gives them much greater control and flexibility and scalability and all those great things. But we think that actually what will be pretty important to the way that cloud is delivered in future is as part of more customized hybrid type solutions where cloud is a component of that solution. Now, that raises a kind of a bit of a dilemma because the whole point about cloud is that it's not something that's necessarily customizable. It should be scalable. It should be volumized, for want of a better word. But that raises a challenge because actually in that world, or in that sense, you really risk rapid commoditization, rapid price erosion, rapid margin erosion. We're seeing that already in the infrastructure as a service space. Where the only value proposition around infrastructure as a service is price, then of course, naturally, the result is price erosion. The pink line in this chart shows, with the arrows, shows the number of times that Amazon Web Services has reduced its prices over the last 2 years. And what we think is that for a lot of service providers, infrastructure as a service is the starting point that they're taking into this cloud world. And we're seeing thousands of companies moving into this market. They're looking at this as an opportunity to move into cloud. And actually, a lot of these companies are going to find it very hard to drive volume, to generate the returns on the investments they've made. And this is a big danger. We think there's going to be a period of consolidation of those companies that don't have a differentiated cloud offering. In contrast, we think the software as a service market is where the majority of growth is going to come from. ISVs are moving more applications to a as-a-service delivery model. And we think, unlike in infrastructure as a service, where it's quite difficult to differentiate between different storage as a service offerings or different, server as a service offerings, especially if they have a sort of vanilla flavor to them. In software as a service, the differentiation is defined by the software. What we also see is that in this transition from on-premise to hybrid to as a service, we're seeing a new ecosystem emerging. New partnerships are being forged. Resellers who've historically held that on-premise relationship, they have solution skill selling, they have the customer relationships, but what they don't have is the ability to deal with annuity businesses. They quite often don't know how to manage SLAs or build SLAs. They overpromise and underdeliver SLAs. Service providers have all those kind of skills, but often they lack the right buying points, relationships into the buying points. So I think there's going to be more and more partnerships between those types of companies, and I think it's incumbent on well, actually, these kind of events are great for finding those kind of partnerships. I think vendors can do more in terms of helping partners to come together and work more effectively together. The other point is that we see a big change in the actual corporate culture from an IT perspective. There is a shift in the balance of power from the traditional IT department down to the user. And this is really, I think, one of the biggest side effects of the cloud, because what it's done is it's shown users what IT should really be able to do in terms of flexibility, agility, the ability to provision applications within minutes rather than weeks or months, and with that huge bill where you can put a credit card onto the web and access the application you need to do your job. So that's driving a big change in the relationship between the user and the IT department within companies, where the IT department moves from being a dictatorial, highly controlling entity, which often actually is all about defending its own existence, if I'm honest, to a situation where they're responding to the user's needs and giving them access to the service they require on the most appropriate delivery model. So whether that's on-premise, whether that's private cloud, whether that's software as a service, or public cloud, again, within this hybrid world. In the mid-market space, where maybe the IT department isn't so huge, isn't so significant, or they lack the resources, this is where the provider of those services becomes key. And actually, we see the channel playing an important role, really in aggregating those services for customers, helping them to manage the complexity of a hybrid environment, of integrating on-premise and off-premise, and again, bringing down those services from the most relevant delivery model to the relevant user on the relevant device to allow the user to do their job. So I want to finish really by reiterating an earlier point, which is I think we need to think more maturely about how we position cloud to our customers. We need to think about doing a better job of allaying some of the fears that customers have about moving to IT as a service, because that's going to be one of the biggest hindrances that your customers have in terms of moving to managed service, IT as a service. This is the reality of most companies in the future. There will be on-premise, there will be some private cloud, some managed, some hosted, some public cloud. The percentage of those different components will differ by company, but essentially this is what it will look like. The application will drive a lot of the focus on IT investment. And the application delivery model, I think more and more will move to an as-a-service model. But what this means is that you need an IT provider or an IT provider model that operates within an ecosystem that brings down all the necessary skills, customer relationships, integration capabilities, delivery platforms that the customer needs to support that hybrid model. So building those effective partnerships, I think, is absolutely critical. If you're a hosting provider and you have those hosting capabilities, look for partners who maybe look for resellers who maybe don't want to fork out a large capital outlay to build their own cloud channels. Look for relationships with appropriate ISVs. This is all about a mix of established and new providers into the corporate environment. We think you need to develop new skills around data center, enterprise mobility, and consumerization in particular. Advising your customers on policies around what consumerization means for their organizations, those kind of things. And I think, finally, the power of marketing will be absolutely key here. We're moving beyond an era of technical features and functions per se as the driver of demand. Actually, the driver of demand will be how effectively you can market to your customers, to a new set of customers, and really identify the levers and explore and bring solutions to them that allow IT to truly deliver business outcomes to them, which is something we have failed to do in the past. So the last thing I'd ask you to do is join our Candefera community. You'll be able to see how to do that when you download the slides. You can get lots of data and reports for free. We give it to the channel for free. We don't give it to vendors free. But it's a loyalty scheme, so filling in surveys, taking part in our research gives you points, and you can access all this data via Candefera. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.